Please check out our sponsors NordVPN for the best in online security. It's the best VPN on the market, and you can try it risk-free now with a 30-day money-back guarantee by visiting nordvpn.com/heartandhand. That's nordvpn.com/heartandhand, and it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Hello everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar and as always I am your host, and I'm getting to sit here this week after our first home league win of the season, the last weekend of October. But it did finally arrive, and I think we're all a little bit happier for it. Joining me to discuss the match at the weekend with Kilmarnock is David Graham. Hello David.
David, good evening listeners.
So, yeah, it's 3 points on the board at Ibrox at last this season. Very, very strange start to the season, of course, David, with the amount of league draws that Rangers have had. But after Thursday night, I think, given the big matches that are coming up this week, we had to start off for Danny Rohl's season, for his spell in charge of Rangers, but also just at the start of this week, anything other than 3 points yesterday, I think, would have been an absolute disaster.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right to say, I think probably you and I deserve to be in this flagship show tonight,
Yes.
David, given the fact that I think in probably mid-August, I recall Gary Gillen being brought in to kind of pull us out because things were so bad even then. We are now almost in November, and as you say, we've got our first league win, which, yeah, it tells a story in itself. But look, let's keep moving forward rather than looking at the past. 3 points, in my view, was a necessity. I mean, I think in an ideal world, and we'll discuss progress, we would get a clean sheet with our next victory, particularly at home. But look, small wins, a small win in many ways. Let's not kind of take away from it, but positive nonetheless. And I think that any chink of light at the minute is good, and it's something we should focus on. So onwards and upwards.
Yeah, Danny Rohl was kind of at pains to say that. I think 5 times in the press conference, Davey, he said it's a small step, no more. And that was the quote. And I think he said it 5 times in the press conference. So he wasn't getting carried away either, which is good. But on the looking forward, I agree with you. I think we do have to. But I think there's a slight thing to look back at right at the start, because it struck me on Thursday, and I think most listeners would have felt the same emotion. And at the weekend, that not only does Danny Rohl have to come in and get his own ideas across, as any new manager does, I think he has to unlearn them of some bad habits and some nonsense, really, that got put in their head at the start of the season. And I noticed a couple of times yesterday when there was a forward pass on, and instinctively, without even looking, they turned round and passed the ball backwards, and he done his dinger on the touchline a couple of times that I saw, and I'm sure there were others as well. And I think that's something that we need to bear in mind, that this isn't a guy who's walking into a totally clean slate of a squad. It's a squad that I think got overloaded with information in the summer, then got further overloaded as the previous manager desperately tried to scrabble about to find something that might work. And by the end, they just looked absolutely punch drunk. They looked like robots that had been filled with too much information and just exploded. The circuits are fried.
Yeah, and I think in a way, and I was actually thinking about this before coming on the show. I almost remember when Stephen Gerrard left and then Gio took over, and I think we were probably roughly around 6 points ahead, and we ended up, I suppose, surrendering that lead over the following months. That wasn't necessarily a reflection on Gio per se. I think what it was a reflection that Stephen Gerrard had got the absolute best out of a lot of players, had almost kind of held the squad together to an extent. And I think whenever Stephen left, that probably left with him. And I think Gio perhaps underestimated the challenge in many ways in terms of kind of motivating the players, and maybe he had expectations of the standards that quite frankly maybe weren't there. And I think in a way it's almost the polar opposite of that, where I think no matter how bad Danny Rohl thinks this is, having taken over, it's probably, in all honesty, worse. There are so many, decent players who have looked like at times they've literally never played football before. Because as you say, they were overcoached, they were given too many instructions, and I've even seen it happen at football. Even consider my own son, where he's under 10s. Let's not get carried away, but he moved position the other week, and I could see in the first half he'd been just told too many things, probably by me, probably by his coaches, in terms of what he needed to do. And look, that is natural human instinct. I think that the players were just given far too much to actually try to get their head round. And I think actually whenever you're in, the heat of battle, you need to do things that are instinctive, just almost work on what you've learned throughout your career. And if that in many ways has been dragged out of you, which it seems to be, Russell Martin has sort of a specialist at doing that, then obviously Danny Rohl has a big job in his hands. And I think, and just let me say, it's very early days, but I think he recognises the challenge ahead of him. I don't think that he's under any illusions. And as you say, what was the quote he used, Davey? A small step, and that's all it is.
A small step, no more.
Small step and no more. I think that's that's the title of this. That's the title of this
Yeah,
show, isn't it? Episode.
I thought that he's given us the title of the episode with that quote, and yeah, I do think that he is aware of obviously the situation that he's walked into. I mean, let's be honest, if you're taking a job in October because the previous manager has been sacked, hasn't left, to go to a bigger league or whatever, it's pretty clear that the things are going to be on fire, and that's the first thing you have to do is come in and as I say, sort of deprogram them. And look, any job, I honestly don't care what it is. You want simple, clear instructions from your line manager, your boss, whatever you want to call it. You want to know, right? I need you to do this. This is how I want you to go about it, and this is how it needs. This is what the finished thing needs to look like. So, if you want to come up with ways that are better, that's fine. But here are the parameters. I think everyone responds better to that. And clearly, whatever Russell Martin was trying to instruct on the players was not working. I mean, they never took it, and they never looked even close to grasping whatever it was. And I do think part of that, Davey, was the one thing about Danny Rohl that I've noticed already is that he does have a grasp, I think, of the circumstances of the league, of the type of games we play, of the opponents. I noticed he said in his press conference that he's unveiling that there are some games where you at Rangers will have 70% possession, and there's some games you'll have 30%, i.e. Europe, and those are different challenges. And I think that he mentioned at the weekend, I'm not somebody who prioritises system over everything. There's a way I want to play football, which is pressing high up front, moving the ball forward as quick as possible, short, incisive passes. But whether it's three at the back, 4-4-2, 4-3-3, that isn't something I'm wedded to. And to me, that just in general, just in terms of a philosophy of football, that's the kind of thing I prefer. I think if you're a believer that you can just play a certain way, no matter what squad you have, I think you're onto a loser straight away.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. I think it is very, very frustrating when, there. I mean, Amaron in particular was probably
Well, yeah, I mean,
lambasted for that.
he's the key thing. You don't have a squad to do, and even now they're starting to pick up wins. People are saying, no, it's working. I'm like, no, he's changed it. If you
Yeah, yeah.
actually look at the way they're playing just now, there are changes there.
And I think that's the philosophy, if you want to put it that, as that how do you want to go and play football? Well, if you want to press high, if you want to be aggressive off the ball, when you've got the ball, if you want to play the ball forward quickly, by all means, that's great. And you can do that in virtually any system, because that's just how you're instructing players to play football. I think that there's no doubt that to be successful at a club like Rangers, you have to be malleable, because as he's identified, look, Danny Rohl's not the first manager or even candidate for the managerial job who's identified this. Anyone with a cursory glance of Scottish football knows. Bluntly, you play at the Old Firm. There's times where you'll have the ball virtually the entire game, and teams will sit in, park a bus. Then you'll go away to Europe, and it's literally like playing a different sport. It's almost like playing tennis and then trying to play rugby. In saying that, the recognition, yes, is important, but I think the ability to not stick to your guns stubbornly to kind of prove a point is again, and as he said, talk about the past, Russell Martin, that was one of his key problems. If I'd rather lose doing what I believe in than change it. Well, you're out of your job now, so well done
Well,
for
no,
that.
100%. And the thing that annoys me about these coaches, because they're usually Pep disciples, right? Pep changes all the time.
Yep,
He
but
changes the way he plays. He changes. He has a way he wants to play, right? It's things he wants his side to do, but he'll change formation, system, put players in different plays. He doesn't care. It's so long as he gets a win. And that's where I think some of these philosophy coaches have gone wrong. Philosophy doesn't mean you do the same thing all the time. Philosophy just means you've got a principle about how you want to play. For some guys, I like to keep it really tight, solid defence, good at set pieces. And there's nothing wrong with that. Thomas Frank at Brentford, now at Spurs, is doing well with that. But how you achieve it should be flexible, especially when you inherit a squad, when you don't have the luxury of building your own squad from scratch and you're inheriting a squad. And I think the fact he was at Sheffield Wednesday, who are a big club in their own right, people, younger listeners may struggle to believe that, but it is true. But they've been through a lot, and he's able to work in difficult situations, clearly. And then this is hopefully where his experience at somewhere like Bayern is useful, where the pressure is you have to win every single game. And I think that's useful for this. So obviously, after what was just a horrible, horrible night in Norway, when Rangers were pathetic, I mean, really bad, and it wasn't just that we got beat; it was the lack of work rate, the lack of effort, the fact that defence was wide open constantly. He did change it; he moved to 3 at the back, started with 2 strikers, although he would change that later on in the game at half time. And I thought that, again, it was better. It wasn't brilliant, right? But Rangers did have more control of the game. They didn't look as vulnerable at the back against an average Kilmarnock side. Let's be honest, this is not a particularly good side, but they had more control of it. Still, I think, need to get better at creating clear-cut chances, Davey, but you could definitely see more application and work rate, which was good to see.
yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt. In many ways, ironically, and there's plenty of games that we could debate the winner of this particular league table, but Thursday night was arguably the worst game of the season, which is quite saying something. I just think in terms of the manner, in terms of we probably all either travelled to Bran or switched on the TV thinking, right, okay, this is sort of the start of a new era. And I think the players just simply lay down very, very early. And I think again, it wouldn't be a show that I was on without me complimenting Jack Butland for probably making, a couple of really good saves, of which actually, to be fair, he made one very good save yesterday in particular in the second half. So that's a regular for him, and it's, I suppose, in many ways what we expect from a Rangers goalkeeper. But yeah, Thursday night was quite something, just in terms of failure to do the absolute basic of basic expectations that whether you are playing in the World Cup final or you're literally kicking about in the Sunday league, if you're not closing down a shot, if you're just letting someone basically run past you, well, that's just a lack of effort rather than a lack of ability. I think one thing I say in terms of Danny Rohl is that he seems to be, and I've no evidence bar the perception that he's very much taking this job one game at a time. I think actually it has to be one game at a time, really, for the rest of this season, given the tragic circumstances we are in, Davy. I think one thing for him starting off in Europe last Thursday was probably not a great place, particularly away. He barely had any time with the players, and I think I don't want to be the sort of author of doom here, but I think it's going to take a very, very strong effort to get ourselves scraped into the knockout stages of Europe at this stage. So that in itself presents a challenge of management in many ways and squad management over the incoming months, because that's up until the end of January, as you well know.
Yep, definitely. And as I say, I thought Rangers, started quite well, had good control of the game, got an excellent goal, and I think that looked like a worked-on set piece to me because at first it looks as though it's sort of they've gone too early, and I think while Kelly are waiting for us to reset, Cornelius starts his run and Tav finds him, which makes me think that was a ploy to do that. And if so, it was very clever. But a really good ball in from Tav. His set pieces were not dead on yesterday, but that one was. And Cornelius with a good header. And at that point, Rangers were playing well, knocking the ball about. I do have to give the crowd a mention yesterday because one, it was high. It was about 45,000, I think, in the stadium. And the Remembrance Day commemorations beforehand were immaculate from both sets of fans. And they stayed with the team because the goal that we conceded, you just praised Jack Butland. He's had a nightmare here. Initially, first thing you do when you see a keeper come like that and get nowhere near it, I thought, is there a foul? There wasn't. He just came and completely missed it. And it's a tap in at the back post after that. And then almost immediately getting back into it with a howler for the Kilmarnock keeper, but it's ruled offside. Miowski's goal. And I did wonder if that might flatten the crowd a little bit, but it didn't. And I think in the second half, we were all worried, if we're being honest. I mean, speaking at half time, certainly, speaking in my groups and talking to people I was at the game with, I was worried that, well, this lot have had a habit in the past of feeling sorry for themselves after something like that, and they'll come out and they'll do nothing for the first 15 minutes and we'll be right up against it, and the crowd will be getting frustrated. Whereas instead, they actually come out and seized the game and got a goal and took command of the game again, and that was heartening to see.
Yeah, well, I think as well, Davey, and yeah, let me just address the Jack Butland point very quickly. Although I am, almost universally in praise of Jack Butland, I think you're right. And I knew we'd talk about this incident. You could probably argue that's a reason why Jack Butland's at Rangers, not in the Premier League. And I don't mean that to sound, harsh on us or harsh on him, but he does have that sort of like brain fart in him. But he also has a world class save in him. Sometimes in the same game.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there. The save at 2-1 is a jet because the Kilmarnock boy does everything right. Textbook, low into the corner, downward on the bounce. It should be a goal. It really is a top draw save.
Yeah, and that's why he's probably one of our best paid players. One thing I'd say is in terms of kind of wider point, like I've been consistent saying this, Davey, throughout this season, no matter how bad it got. I think our fans have been, very supportive of the team. Yes, our fans have got, serious issues and concerns with the CEO, with the director of football, and there's even a sort of a level of kind of concern, dare I say, around the new ownership. But actually, when it's come to the 90 minutes, the support for the actual team, I feel, has been very positive. I've alluded to it already. The Bruges game when we're 3-0 down after less than 20 minutes. Obviously the like yesterday, different context. But again, the fans have stuck with the team this year, and I think it's a testament to the fan base because, in many ways, and Martin Ramsey will be able to potentially cite worst times in our history. Certainly, I don't remember as difficult a time, setting aside off-field issues with administration, various things, in terms of the start of the season in my lifetime, or certainly supporting Rangers. So, from that point of view, I think the fans deserve something, and hopefully it starts with a real positive result. Yes, of course, on Wednesday night, but particularly on Sunday at Hampden.
Definitely. Danilo's goal was a beauty, and I thought Magoma, who was one of many who just looked completely out of depth on Thursday night. He looked far more comfortable in that wing-back role because I don't think it's controversial to say he's better going forward than he is defensively. And what they did there was put in big centre half, Cornelius in behind him to help him deal with the stuff defensively and gave him licence to get forward. And he was busy all afternoon. Great ball in, and this is a top quality header. That's such a difficult skill because it's slightly behind him, Danilo. And I liked everything about this goal from a striker's point of view because he's ghosted into the space, he's found the space, he's lost his marker, and then to kind of lean back and put it with the direction perfectly into the corner. It really is a top drawer finish.
Look, Danilo's a quality player. I don't think anyone ever, since he was signed, ever questioned that. I just think he's been really unfortunate with A, the number of injuries, B, the severity of some of those injuries, and then C, because of A and B, he has then struggled to get back to a level of fitness where he can compete for a starting place. And I know that I mean, he was 6 million quid from memory. If we haven't sung the song in a long time, but he wasn't that much less than Chermeti, who I'm sure we'll get on to discuss. So, in a way, that we do need a tune out of Danilo, and someone like that is a player that again we would need to step up for us. Easter Road, Hampden. I mean, that's ultimately the games he was signed for.
Absolutely. I think he's got a reasonable record against Celtic. I think he's got 3 already against them. So a return to form for him ahead of next week would be pretty good. And then after that, again, when to give the crowd their due, they didn't get nervous at 2-1. After about an hour and whatnot, they stuck with the team and were rewarded with a third goal. And it was, if ever somebody needed a goal, it was Yusuf Chermiti.
Yeah, and I think he got a bit of luck along the way, but yeah,
Oh,
you
it's a
could,
howler
you
for the
know,
Kelly keeper. But when you're not scoring, I mean, how many times do you hear strikers say, "Oh, I just need one to go in off my backside,"
oh,
anything at all? And it was that type of goal. But he's taking the shot on. He's got a bit of luck, but I just think that maybe that was the type of goal he was needing.
Yeah, no, I think there's no doubt. I want to say tongue in cheek, had Russell Martin still been our manager, he'd have turned back and lumped it to John Streeter to start again. But I think in terms of Chermeti, one thing I do want to raise, and I think it would be remiss of us not, there's nothing off the table on the podcast. His celebration, I mean, who's that directed at, in your opinion, or listeners, in your opinion? I just felt it was a bit, people were talking. I get that. But a lot of fans just reading on social media see it term it as, that was him having to go with the crowd. I don't necessarily have an opinion. I'm just keen to know what you think, Davey.
I don't think it's specifically at the crowd as much as just people in general. I mean, and you'd like to think that obviously, and give a player the benefit of the doubt. But even if it was, I can understand that. I think we can be a little bit precious at times. The thing I hate is the shush. So
Yeah.
maybe that's, if he'd done that, I take it more as just people are saying, and let's be honest, people have been saying he's useless. Why have they
Hmm.
spent 8 million quid for him? Not, and that's why I don't think it's just fans, because it's pundits. I very much doubt that the boy sits and reads FF, but he probably does read, newspapers or football sites or whatnot, or listen to, radio stations or watch the TV. And people have been saying 8 million quid, he's garbage. Why did Rangers sign him? Kind of thing. And it's not the boy's fault. That's the thing. That's always the thing with the fee. It's not the player's fault that he's done that, and that the person who's bought him is so unpopular at Rangers. So he's kind of taken, I think, some bullets for Thelwell. And I think if you're the player, you're probably thinking, well, hang on here, I've just arrived and I'm already being written off. But I'm maybe being a lot kinder than I would have been if we if we hadn't won yesterday.
Yeah.
But
No, I think
I
there's.
can understand. The one that does annoy me is the shush. Right, to your own fans, do it to the opposition fans. That's fine. Don't have a problem with that. And don't have a problem with opposition players doing it to us, because I give them plenty during the game. But I think if you're doing it to your own fans, you're not going to win that fight. I'd like to think, therefore, benefit of the doubt, that it was just a case of, like, maybe that will start shutting some people up. But the only thing that will do that is to shut people up, is to score more goals. That's how you end the whole debate round it. You put the ball in the back of the net, you play well. And he played well when he came on. His hold up was a lot better. He was getting the ball and he was driving at them, rather than, as you say, just looking really nervous. And I thought it was a far better performance. What I will say is, just finally on it, younger players now do this more. They do react more. They are more emotional, I think, or at least not as good at keeping their emotions in the dressing room the way that the players we grew up with were. And I think that's just the world now, isn't it? People are encouraged to show emotion on social media, a lot more than even when when you and I were growing up. It wasn't a done thing. We're still part of, I think, the stiff upper lip generation, and you just get on with it. But no, I think I would tend to think it was more at players, because I'm more at just people in general talking about them, pundits, etc. Because I think that when a player is telling the crowd to shut up, they do the shush.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I don't ever take. I mean, my view on Tremedy, and I think I've said this on here before. We need him to work out. So even though I think universally, if there's one thing that Rangers fans can agree on, is that Patrick Stewart should resign ASAP, and I think the general view is that Kevin Thelwell's pretty much in the same bus out of Ibrox. But what I would say is, regardless of that, Tremedy's here in a long-term
He's
contract.
still going to be here, exactly.
He's going to be here, and I think so. There's nothing to be gained by Tremedy's crap. Therefore, that makes our argument for Kevin Thelwell to leave more compelling. I think that in many ways the two things are totally separate, because even if Tremedy goes on to score 30 goals before the end of the season, it still doesn't raise or answer the numerous concerns that Rangers fans have around Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart.
No, and the other thing about it is, I had a friend actually say that to me on Thursday. He's like, "Oh, he's picked him. He's a Thelwell puppet for picking him." And I said, "No, it's Rangers have spent $8 million on a forward who's got a 4-year deal." Now, if you think that Rangers are just going to go after 6 weeks, or he's shite, never play him, we'll just let him run down his deal, hope some idiot comes in and gives us $8 million for him. That's not going to happen. As you say, we need to try and get something from him. Similarly, Miovski, who's not playing well at all. I mean, his touch, his layoffs yesterday were dreadful, really bad, and he's better than that, because I've seen him be better than that. But we can't just ditch the two of them and go, right, okay, they're both rubbish, let's get them out. And similarly, into the conversation is Danilo, because he's there, he's on a good wage, he's one of the better paid players. We spent a lot of money on him. A manager has to try and get stuff from all of those players, and the two of them have scored yesterday. Now the next thing is to get Miovski fired and get the three of them fired, and otherwise, we can't write off the combined fee for the three of them is what, 17 million.
Yeah, yeah.
So Rangers can't be saying, right, okay, we've got 17 million worth of duds here, let's just no bother with them. We need to try and get something out of them, as much as we can, because it's such a key position and it's such a big outlay.
Well, I think the other thing that I would say as well is actually to go back to the point you made earlier about Pep, Davy, and it's a very good one where managers think, oh well, I'll do what Pep does because it works. But what you've got to bear in mind with Pep, he can probably what a Pep type level of manager will view as a failure in terms of recruitment is going to be very different and for very different reasons than what we will at Rangers, for example. And I think that that's where you have to consider where when they're recruiting in the top pot, when they're looking at the very much the cream of the cream, to the point where, and I remember having this conversation with the director of football where I said, why when Van Dijk left them to go to Southampton, why would someone like Liverpool, when he clearly was a decent player, why would they not take a punt then? And his answer was to say, well, actually, Liverpool don't want to take any risk when they're signing, a player, because they're prepared to spend the money. So therefore, they want Van Dijk to tick various boxes before they're prepared to sort of cross that line. And I think that the point that I'm making here is that just shows the totally different level of market we're dealing with. And it also shows that our risk is totally different. So we are taking risks on players, even the like of Chermeti, because it's a totally different market and a totally different context. And that's where you're right. For these risks to pay off, we need the Danilos, need Tremetis, we need other players to be stepping up with a significant amount of goals. And I think what it would say, and probably to play devil's advocate more than anything, that the slight concern I have is that Tremedy seems to be it doesn't seem to be a domestic starter, and obviously Danny Rohl's come in now as a second manager this season to sort of consider that, and that's a bit of a worry in that. Yes, you're a big outlay, Davy, for European games and the money at stake, but ultimately our bread and butter is winning Kilmarnock at home, St Mirren away. Their games that win or lose you a league.
No, I think he is brought in as a starter, like all the time. That's he just hasn't been up to it at the moment, and it's hopefully we'll see all these things that Kevin Thelwell spoke about. The stats and the physicality and the power and the running, and you hope to see all of that back. I do think that. I like the fact he was keen to get two up front, changed it because he thought the system would work slightly better, and it did. But I think that Danilo plays well with a partner because he's a clever player. He's not the quickest though, but he finds space well and he can link up quite well with someone near him. And his best football, I thought, was last season when he played just off either Igaman or Dessers. And then, of course, for some reason, Clement just totally abandoned it and never went back to it, which was bizarre. So I think that having that extra body up there, having two, Danilo and one other, I can see possibilities in that, and clearly so can the manager. But it's just about finding the right way to fit them all together. So Rangers back on track. Literally on the track. I was going to say back on track. I mean, we haven't been on it this season, but hopefully we'll begin to, because we have two absolutely massive games this week. Hibs away on Wednesday, a good Hibs side, right? They've been impressing now for well over a year. They're solid. They know what they're doing. They've got pace up front. They could score goals. There's no free pass there at the best of times, but it certainly won't be on Wednesday. And then, of course, the League Cup against, we have to be honest here, a misfire in Celtic. A Celtic coming off two league defeats, although they've Falkirk at home on Wednesday, and you'd imagine they'll get back to winning ways there. But all is not well in their camp either. And Rangers need to go into these matches with a positive mindset because, Danny Rohl spoke about it yesterday. He said that things can change quickly in football and a few wins changes the mood. If Rangers win these two games, then the world looks a lot different come next Monday.
Oh, look! I mean, let's not spend too long talking about those in the East End, but they are in a world of pain, which is a great source of frustration for me, and I assume every one of our listeners, in that there was a real opportunity here this year. They have in many ways maybe not imploded in the level of the 55 season, but they are not in a good place. In my view, they are there for the taking on Sunday. I think going back a step, one of our challenges is East Road will be very, very difficult on Wednesday night. I don't know where they are, but I'm going to assume that they are home if we are away, which leads into Sunday. I mean, the big problem for Danny Rohl is, and I think we alluded to it at the very start, it's about unlearning things. Our record at Hampden, particularly against them, is not good. There's no point saying that it is. In recent years, and I think that is a challenge for Danny Rohl to be able to get the team and the players and the squad to a place and motivate them to a place that they believe they can win. I mean, one thing I would say looking ahead to Sunday is it's unfortunate that it's probably too early for Dijon Sterling to return, because I think we probably miss someone that provides just a bit of kind of grit and steel. Someone who can sit in McGregor and make life difficult for him so he doesn't prance around like he's Zinedine Zidane as he usually tries to do. And I think that's probably where I feel we've a bit of a soft underbelly. Raskin does run around a bit like a dog after a bone, but there's not at times the level of output that apparently we get at Belgium. Diamonde, again, physical, does throw himself around. His difficulty is that his timing and tackles seems to be even worse than Paul Scholes' ever was. So he is certainly a walking yellow with a potential red. So there are a number of questions looking forward to Sunday, but I think you're right. It's a massive week, and if this time next week, if we're sitting at this time on this flagship saying, we got to win away at Easter Road, and we won by hook or by crook. I said this as soon as Russell Martin was sacked. I said the new manager needs to win at Hampden, regardless of how he does it. If it's the 15th penalty in the penalty shootout, just get out, win one way or another. And I think, going back to what you said earlier, and a valid point you made, Davey, in terms of someone not being wedded to a system, this is the type of goal challenging game that may suit Danny Rohl, because he will potentially try to outthink his opponent. And I think there's no doubt that Rodgers has already checked out. I think that's quite clear. I think he's working his ticket. And certainly, if they're going to show any sort of chin or drop their hands at all, we need to make sure they're on the canvas.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because we have a very big and very difficult game on Wednesday. But we are going into it a bit brighter, and I think most people so far have liked what they've seen from the coach. It's really early, and I don't want to extrapolate too far with it because it is really early. But he's got a good manner about him, Davey. He's straightforward, I think, and I think we needed that. I think we needed somebody who was just a very clear, open, honest communicator, didn't speak in cliche, doesn't give you bullshit bingo, doesn't try and present himself as something that he isn't. And I think that people can tell when somebody's being inauthentic. I think that's one of the Scottish people and Northern Irish people have a great gift for being able to spot someone who's a bullshit artist, and he doesn't seem to be that at all.
Well, look, one thing that I admire him for, it is not easy to come to Scotland. If you were to throw an arrow at all the kind of, football heavyweight nations in the world, you wouldn't be trying to hit Scotland. It's not your, triple 20. And I think that had he probably been patient, he probably would have picked up another job in and around the English Championship. There would have been plenty of other leagues, where opportunities would have arisen for him. So he has taken a risk on us as well, particularly given the circumstances that he is, or the context that he has inherited. And I think what I would say is that, I admire that courage that he is prepared to take a risk. And I think he's shown that, if he is to do, even a reasonable job with us, he certainly will then be putting himself back in line for other jobs. So, I like the fact that he has came here, that he has shown some courage. He has not come in to try to, downplay anything or upplay anything, as you say. And look, all we can do, and I said this from the start, we got to support the manager. And I think that, ultimately, regardless of all the wider circumstances and concerns that any football fan will have, ultimately, this guy's in charge for the foreseeable future, and we want him to be successful.
100%. And I think the fans, as I say, do have a reasonable understanding and grasp of the difficulty he's in at the moment. That won't protect him forever, of course. But I do think that there's a real sense of, okay, he seems a decent guy, and we've been a shit show. And I think that people are aware of that, and we'll cut him a little bit of slack. But clearly, that's easy to be saying when we're sitting here after a win. We'll see how we feel if things don't go our way. But hopefully, that will not be the case for you. Well, we could certainly all do. We certainly all deserve, I think, some happy days ahead. Anyway, that will do us this week on Heart and Hand for the flagship. Anyway, Cammy will be here later in the week with Heart and Hand Extra, where he'll go over the Hibs game and preview the trip to Hampden to play Celtic. David, my thanks for joining me.
Pleasure as always.
My thanks to our producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and my thanks to you guys for listening. If you want more from us, then go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/heart and hand. Just $1.99 per month can get you access to up to 5 shows every single day on all things Rangers. And we covered it in great detail over there. But if not, I'll be back here next week. Thank you for joining us. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.